We invite all who would care to join us in standing with the recitation of the Lord's Prayer, followed by a moment of silence. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. It is now 7 o'clock. Shelby City Council meeting is called to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated, please. Roll call, please, Mr. Crown.
Mr. Robb.
Here.
Mr. Roberts.
Here.
Mr. Gates.
Here.
Mr. Martin.
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin. Here.
I'll entertain a motion for the dispensing of the reading of the journal of April 20th, 2020.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Robb to dispense with the reading of the journal from April 20, 2020. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yay.
Mr. Robb.
Yay.
That motion passes. On the agenda, we have public comment. As far as I know, we received no public comment at City Hall by the deadline, so there's no public comment to share. Mr. Martin.
I did receive an email from a constituent regarding the thing on swimming pools before us this evening, so I can address that and read his email at that time, but I just wanted to let you know that at that time we'll do it.
That would be splendid, thank you. Did anyone else receive an email perhaps for public comment? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move forward to reports from standing and special committees. Of course, on our agenda is the Community and Economic Development Committee. They did not meet, so there will be no report. And Public Works and General Operations Committee did not meet, so there will be no report. Reports of city officials. I will keep my report fairly brief this evening. Our fire and police departments continue to do a phenomenal job in these challenging days. Hats off to both departments and Chief Thompson and Chief Combs. Our non-safety service employees continue to work on staggered schedules. The administration will evaluate the status of conditions on May 15th. We will determine staffing levels on that day as we move forward. The health department continues to monitor environmental health issues and COVID-19 cases. Additionally, we follow up on complaints of Ohio Department of Health non-compliance incidents across the city, and we try to do that within hours, if not minutes. And sometimes there are just some misunderstandings of what's going on in a particular facility. But I want to commend our businesses have been cooperative, and even if have been some things pointed out, they've been very cooperative, so thankful for that. Garage sales was brought up, and the Ohio Department of Health did set some guidelines for garage sales, and we'll try to get those pushed out on our social media. I was going to bring it up here, but we'll try to get on social media, our health department website, our city website, and in the paper. You can well imagine what pretty much the same things that go for any retail sales, going in a garage sale or yard sale, social distancing, cleansing, sanitizing, masks by those that are participating, and some of those issues. So we will strongly encourage all of our residents who are going to host such a sale to follow those guidelines. And they can be found at the Ohio Department of Health website. So just keep that in mind. It looks like we will not have a Memorial Day parade. Have had some conversations of perhaps having something at the cemetery, a ceremony. Would really love to video that and then put that on our website somewhat later. So we're going to see if we're able to make that happen. But certainly there will be no Memorial Day parade, I'm sad to announce. Probably saw in the paper that the City of Shelby received a National Safety Award. I'll read a brief bit of that. American Municipal Power Incorporated is proud to announce that the American Public Power Association presented the City of Shelby with a first place safety award. The APPA Safety Award recognizes utilities with the lowest safety incidence rate within their group of like-sized utilities in 2019. And so it goes on to say, Shelby's commitment to the safety of their employees is commendable, said Jolene Thompson, AM President and CEO. So very, very proud of our line department and all of our electric division in receiving this National Safety Award. And with that, I will conclude my report. Are there any comments or questions for me in regard to this report? Mr. Martin.
Mayor, you had mentioned that the health department's following up with reports of non-compliance, et cetera. Is there some kind of report that the administration can do to kind of show how many calls and such like that? Or is there a plan to put together such a report for maybe one of the safety committee or something along those lines?
We will certainly happy to compile a report such as that. Further questions? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, what's the status of weed mowing? I had turned in, my neighbors last fall abandoned their house, and it's probably been 2 weeks ago now that I had sent an email and saying it's not 8 inches, it'll soon be 8 inches. Well, now it's well over 8 inches.
Let me check on that. Ms. Conrad has been doing our weed notices now, taking all our pictures, and I'm sure you're well aware of that, and she has really been, between her and Miss Tiffany, they've been really, really busy. I would imagine that that's why this is kind of a little bit behind, but I will speak to her. But I think we're going to, of course, we don't have the staff, we're staggering our staff, we're not fully staffed in the service department yet either. So it's either that it has not yet been documented or perhaps because of being shorthanded, but I will double check on that.
Okay. I've turned in 3 in my ward already, and I know it's only going to get worse, and I dare say throughout the rest of the city.
And thank you for bringing that up, yes, and I see about the same things you're seeing. Boy, this is good weather for grass to grow up. All those so fast. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Mr. Martin.
Maybe it would be good, along with a social media post on garage sales and such, to remind residents that they can still go out and mow their yard. So, get the sunshine.
Yes,
Vitamin D.
a little vitamin D,
Yep.
it is their duty. Very good. Any other questions, comments? Right, if not, we'll move forward then to Mr. Crum, Director of Finance.
Thank you. It's a little early for the April financials. I will have something to the Finance Committee, hopefully sooner than our Finance meeting, because I would like to get a handle on where we're going to be financially. And it's still early in the game because everything, tax collection tends to lag a couple months behind the actual events. I'm sure that April income tax will be down significantly from last year, not only because of the stop working, but also because we moved our tax date. And so all of those that owe money to the city for last year's taxes are probably not in any hurry to pay us. So that will delay things and kind of skew our numbers even more so than just the withholding. I am hopeful that a lot of the businesses in town applied for some of the government stimulus packages that are out there. They should theoretically be receiving those funds soon if they were approved. And a lot of those do require employees to come back to work, which we would get withholding on again. So I'm hopeful for that, and I think that a lot of our big employers are also hanging in there, which will help cushion the blow a little bit as well. I will definitely let you guys know as soon as I can have some sort of good data for you. That's pretty much all I have for report this evening. Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Crum in regard to his report? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Crum. Mr. Eister, of course, is not here this evening. Mr. Geis, project coordinator.
Just very briefly, for our downtown enhancement project, we should have to the next council meeting to authorize the mayor to sign the contract with the design firm, so that can be moving forward. Our West Main Street sewer, all the sewer pipe is run. They've done a lot of the restoration on the driveways and so forth. They got some more road work to do. For the city part of that, the transformer and the generator are scheduled to be the last week of this month, and then our guys will be there to hook it up right away. And then we can test that unit and finish that project out, and then move on to the lateral. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Geis. Are there any questions for Mr. Geis or comments in regard to his report? Thank you. New business. Any new business to be brought before council this evening? Hearing none, move forward to unfinished business. Future use of the Main Street Fire Station, or the engine house. We did, Mr. Geis, Chief Thompson and I had a phone conversation with a community EMS official. They are now coming under the ownership of a different company that's still in process, as we spoke of over the last several months. But he looks at that deal is going to be completed in the near future, and so at that point, then we'll be in conversation with their new owners. They gave assurances that it's a very strong organization out of Illinois, am I correct? Joe, you remember correctly? And seem to have a good, strong background in not only emergency services, but I think also in healthcare and so forth. So it seems like they're being brought under the ownership of a very strong company. So we look forward to conversing with them in the very near future. Exterior property maintenance at 59 West Main Street remains the same. Is there any other unfinished business? If not, we'll move forward into legislation. Mr. Brown.
Ordinance number 10, 2020, enacting section 230.04 Federal Uniform Guidance Policies of Chapter 230, Mayor, of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Shelby.
Move for second reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts for the second reading of ordinance number 10, 2020. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yay.
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
Ordinance number 10, 2020 passes its second reading.
Ordinance number 11, 2020, amending Chapter 1050 Electricity, Section 1050.02 Rates and Charges for Service, B1 Generation Charge of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Shelby, Ohio.
Second reading. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Martin for the second reading of ordinance number 11, 2020. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yay.
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
Ordinance number 11, 2020 passes its second reading.
Ordinance number 12, 2020, amending section 1482.06 of chapter 1482 swimming pools for the codified ordinances of the city of Shelby.
Move for first reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robb and a second by Mr. Roberts for the first reading of ordinance number 12, 2020. Discussion. Mr. Martin.
This is from Andrew, and I'm going to butcher his last name, but I'm going to try my best. Gertler, Guertler, 3290 Wareham.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, see, I said I was going to butcher it. Anyways, he basically wanted to say that he wanted to reach out, and he had requested this ordinance be amended when they decided to put in their swimming pool. After doing research, they realized that the retractable automatic pool covers are safer than fences and have the added benefit of energy efficiency. They seal when closed and do not allow escape of heat, requiring less fuel heat. He said he provided information to Mr. Geis, and it includes other cities' codes that allow for auto covers, and he took the liberty of highlighting the appropriate sections for the convenience. This information he sent. He said that there's also a video of showing that children are able to play on top of the auto cover, so there's no chance of danger in that as well. Said if you have any questions, please let me know. Happy to answer anything, provide any additional information. What is the comment submitted on this ordinance?
Thank you. Mr. Geis.
Yes, I did have Mr. Gertler and several pool manufacturing companies who requested that we change our ordinance. I discussed this with the Richland County Building Department. They've allowed it because it meets a ASTM section and so forth, so they've allowed it. I put that section in there, ASTM 1346, I looked it up, and it just creates a lot of standards on the weight of how much can go on that covers and so forth. And if you look at a lot of the other ordinances, they were kind of detailed about, you know, so much square inch and this and that. And I thought if we just followed that ASTM, if that changes, it's going to be, you know, we can just keep with that and make it a lot easier. So.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts. Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yay.
Mr. Robb.
Yay.
Ordinance number 12, 2020 passes its first reading.
Resolution number 22, 2020, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement with Southside Excavating to remove lime sludge from the water treatment plant, large sludge drying lagoon, and declaring an emergency.
Move the resolution be passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. Roberts for the passage of resolution number 22, 2020. Discussion. Mr. Martin.
I also have a statement from Mr. Insman on this. Bear with me a second. All right, only one company replied to our request for a quote to remove the sludge. The others, two others, that declined to provide a quote due to the job was too small. The last year that a lagoon was cleaned out was in 2018. The service department employees organized the project, and they contacted area farmers to see who needed the lime sludge. They rented an excavator to remove the sludge from the lagoon and then hauled out 561 dump truckloads. The reason for the emergency legislation, there is a short window of opportunity right now to land apply the sludge onto the fields, as it needs to be worked into the ground within 30 days of delivery, and the farmers are currently working on their fields. Additionally, the 3 lagoons at the treatment plant are completely full. There would be nowhere to store the sludge if we had to drain and work on a clarifier. Our backup is to landfill the sludge. So that is from Mr. Insman, and I visited out there, and indeed, this is definitely needed.
Thank you. Further discussion.
really appreciate that information because my marginal note was, did we get any other quotes? So that answered that. So I'm thank you, Mr. Mark, for sharing that information.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yay.
Mr. Rob.
Yay.
Resolution number 22, 2020 passes.
Resolution number 23, 2020, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Safety to apply for a grant through the United States Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance, and declaring an emergency.
Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that council suspend the rule requiring a 3-day notice for legislation.
We have what was that? What was the first part? By unanimous?
Unanimous consent
Yes.
to suspend the rule.
Mr. Gates asking for a unanimous request to suspend the rule, waive the requirement that a piece of legislation be given a 3-day notice. Something wrong with. Repeat that, please.
There's an ordinance, a council rule that requires that legislation be provided to members of council 3 days prior to council meeting. Obviously, this one just came to people's attention this evening, so I'm asking unanimous consent to waive that rule.
Are there any objections to waiving the rule?
Suspend the rule, excuse me.
Suspend the rule. Are there any objections to suspending the rule? If not, the rule will be suspended.
Mayor, I move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts for the passage of Resolution 23, 2020. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I received an email from the police chief on Thursday, the 30th, explaining the situation regarding our body cams. And so at this point, the chief is here. I'll let him explain the need for this.
So, at appropriation time, we had looked at replacing some of our body-worn cameras. We are down several cameras, we're sharing cameras, and most of those cameras are about 4 years old, so they're nearing the end of life. None of them are covered by warranty. So we looked at replacing the entire system, which was cost prohibitive, but we did determine that we could probably replace the cameras that are down for around $10,000. Prior to this pandemic issue, we normally, I have a meeting with most of the service clubs and other organizations, and they're usually very helpful in providing donations for some of those costs. So that wasn't included in the budget request. Obviously, due to the pandemic, most of those organizations right now are not meeting, and they don't have the income, and we don't have the ability to meet with them to provide for that. Captain Mack found this grant. It's very similar to the original grant that we applied for to get the body cameras. I think it's probably a long shot, but we found this grant a little bit late in the game. I talked to the finance director. We had done some creative budgeting that would allow us to purchase a vehicle, but due to that spending freeze this year, I don't think it's prudent that we probably make that purchase. Our goal is to try to conserve as much money as we can going into next year, so we've halted all purchases. However, that line item, which would be the police equipment fund, does have that amount. It's a 1-to-1 match grant, so we would spend $10,000 to replace, I believe, 8 or 9 cameras. And if we were approved for that grant, we would receive reimbursement from the Department of Justice for half of that, which would be $5,000. So it's a $10,000 expenditure to get 50% of that paid for and reimbursed. Again, I think in reading the details of the grant, which I did provide to everybody tonight, I think it's probably a long shot, but I think it's worth the attempt. My fear is that if we don't put some money back into that body camera program, if we have more cameras fail, then that body camera program is in jeopardy. So it's worth it to us to make that expenditure regardless, but if we have the opportunity to get half of that funded, then I think we should take the opportunity and make the attempt.
Thank you, Chief. Any further discussion? Mr. Gates?
Mayor, the reason for the emergency clause here is that this grant is due tomorrow.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Resolution 23, 2020 passes. Miscellaneous business. Mr. Gates?
Mayor, and the council adjourned.
Second.
I think Steve beat you. Mr. Gates moves to be adjourned, and a second by Mr. McLaughlin. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
That motion passes. We adjourn at 7:25.